You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Live every single Tuesday night, right here on all your favorite social media networks, as well as in your hearts. We're always with you. You can also download the audio version on Thursdays at midnight. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and... Forever he will be unnamed. Never again.
It doesn't work.
You know, it's funny because
It's not working.
Apple had their WWDC event yesterday, and they decided to just not fix anything.
Yeah.
They just announce new stuff and don't fix any of their old stuff.
Well, that's what I thought.
Well, they need new stuff
To break?
fix.
That's right.
So they just
That's what it is. They need to. I'll get it going.
I hope so.
Keith is a little disappointed.
I hope. I didn't even notice. Sean was the one that noticed it this week.
What were you going to press?
I wasn't. I didn't notice.
We
Sean
all
noticed
know
it.
that you know what you're going to press every time.
I mean, I know what I will press eventually, but I'm just saying.
Maybe I don't want it on
in
for that reason.
In that moment, I didn't even know it wasn't working. Sean pointed it out.
Pushes the same damn thing every week and never tries
Because there's nothing else on there worth pushing. You need to fix it. Get some better things on there.
I mean,
None
I
of that
don't
stuff
push the
fits.
buttons,
You
so
should.
I'm not taking on the load of suggesting
buttons.
things. Oh, there it
You
goes.
can push the buttons if you want to push
But I don't normally think about it or do it.
It is a
you
shared
do.
responsibility.
Well, I only think about
Everyone
it because of this.
Can
I think you
There
need
it
to
is.
send Brandon a list of things that you would like on there, and then we'll go from there.
Now, sometimes there's things that do correlate, you know, like.
but there's times
now
where
and
that
then.
one doesn't correlate. And
Oh no,
you
that
still
one never
push it.
has to correlate. That
No.
just needs to be heard.
Yeah, and that one,
Anakin's lasting legacy.
Yeah.
on both ends,
young and old.
young and old.
I enjoy both of those infinitely more than anything Disney has churned out.
Yeah.
So,
we're
okay,
gonna talk
enough-
about that.
Fair
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
Fair
yeah.
point. We long live the galaxy far, far away,
That's another.
and that's the one.
There you go.
That's
Wow.
the one that
There
George
you go.
created for that.
How many Star Wars are on there? Those
just
are
those three, I think.
Those three, yeah. The good ones. It's
Yeah.
from the good years.
Yeah.
Old time classics. We do have a great show for everybody, as Sean alluded to there. We've got some headlines to dive into. I'm going to be talking about George Lucas
Georgie.
having his opinions about people crapping all over the originals and how we're still a fan of them, and most fans are. No one's watching The
Yeah.
Acolyte.
Yeah.
They praise that show for getting
Yeah,
4
well-
million viewers.
Yeah.
That 4 million's abysmal. They said
For
it was
Disney. It's pretty.
the
It was
bad.
the
most
most this
watch
year.
Yeah.
of 2024. I'm
Yes.
like, well, yeah, nothing else has
It's
come
like you
out.
don't have you haven't set the bar high at
No.
all. So
And it is just getting
well,
ripped
George had
apart.
his chance to try to correct the course, and he still voted for Bob Iger. So
That's true.
The only show that's doing worse than that is Doctor Who.
Oh yeah. Actually, the ratings are around the same, like the 4 million, 3 million, like very bad.
Both
Yeah.
Disney-owned properties.
Well, Doctor Who's not owned by
Okay,
Disney.
it's not.
It is
on Hulu in the States.
Well, no, it's on Disney Plus.
Oh, it is. Oh,
It's-
it is on Disney
It's
Plus. Okay.
it's just licensed by Disney to air. They
There
have
you
the
go.
rights to air the new episodes,
That's
but I
what
mean,
I
it's
meant.
still technically made and owned by BBC. But they have that Disney money, so of course they're going to be just as woke as Disney to appease their mouse overlord.
Of course.
So-
Everything he just said, I was thinking that.
I mean, not that the BBC wasn't going that direction without Disney. So either way, I think it was just two bads making even greater bad.
That seems to be the world we live in these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
And just like everything is going to crap, nothing's getting better.
Nothing.
you know? But
Nothing.
We do have a great show. We got another review. I didn't
Talking
say
about things
well,
going to crap.
As I've always stated in the past, and we'll continue to, we have a great review. Now, the content of that review is great. Whether the movie is great, we'll let you all be the judge.
Yeah.
But we ended up going to see Shamalama Ding Dong Daughter's latest film.
It's funny. I had not on the podcast. I forget when we were talking about it, but I mentioned that And like I know a lot of people get really ticked about like the nepotism discussion, and like within politics, yeah, nepotism is very bad. Within certain like job frames, I'm like I'm really not opposed to nepotism, like as far as like helping them get a leg up.
Right.
Now, if they've proven that they don't deserve their position, then and they still continue to have it, then that's definitely negative nepotism. And I guess it's too early to say with her, but I'm just like, yeah, maybe you didn't quite deserve this one yet.
Well, if anything, I guess maybe we should get into the review, because if anything, I feel like it's kind of a carbon copy of her old dad.
Yeah. Well,
and I think
it's
he's,
funny, and I'll mention it. I mentioned it in the review, and I'll mention it afterwards, but it's funny how much it feels like his last two movies, and then you find out she actually helped make those. So
right.
Oh,
right.
wow.
Yeah.
So it's par for the course.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, let's just dive into it. Here is this. I don't even know if this popped up on the box office charts. Bad Boys 2 or 4.
4.
Bad
That
Boys
took number
4
one.
took number 1.
And I think Garfield came in number 2.
that makes sense. Now, oddly, Furiosa did drop out of the top 5.
It's not in theaters anymore.
It got knocked out of 800,
800
plus
theaters.
theaters.
Yeah, it's
That's
still in some
insane.
theaters, but
Only
yeah.
3 weeks old
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Or was it 2
Well,
weeks? I
again,
think it's
it's
only
like
2 weeks old.
2 weeks, yeah, I think.
Wow.
Which Fall Guys in some theaters still too, but look at like 2 weeks after it went to digital, and it's like if they don't make it at the box office, it's no longer let's see if it rebounds later. It's just let's just throw it
Now,
out.
for the Fall Guy, though, they are saying that since they brought it to digital, they have brought in some cash.
It's gotten great word of mouth.
It's been
bet.
selling digitally, yeah.
Well, and it's a shame because I understand the economics of it. I understand that when you're buying a ticket for the price of $20,
Yeah.
as opposed to buying it for a family of 4 or 5. Why not? You're buying
Yeah.
it for a household. Or, hey, everybody come over. We'll just watch it over here.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
you can watch it more than once, too.
yeah.
That's...
Well, typically within, I guess, a 24-hour period.
Well, no, you can
No,
buy
you
it for
buy
$20.
it for $20.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's
Rent
not
it
renting
for
it.
5,
Right.
4
Yeah.
or 5, yeah.
Which is crazy, and it's like I know there's a difference with at-home media versus the cinema, and the cinema having to make certain money and the production company. But the fact that you can own a movie for $20 versus paying $20 now for a ticket, because that's how much our Furiosa ticket was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
granted, that was XD, but even a regular movie is now around $16
But
a
think
ticket.
about it. I mean, we've added to this in the sense that, yes, we as often as we go to the theater to see new releases, because there still is like a semi-schedule for new releases being in theaters at least the first week it comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, go see everything in XD, or we don't go see a premium format. We get our $20 AMC Stubs A-List subscription so that we can go see a plethora of movies a month. We already complain about AMC enough, rightfully so, but it's by no means, in most cases, at least for the last several months, been a premium experience.
Oh, no.
Beating at home. I'd rather watch half the movies we've gone to see, especially the duds, in the comfort of my own home than going to a theater like AMC.
It's not worth paying a $20 price tag when you're not getting a premium experience anymore.
Right.
But then again, part of maybe why AMC can't offer that premium experience is because they're losing money off of these $20 memberships. But it's a double-edged sword
it's
because,
true. It's true. Or they're only pumping the money into the big cities where
they're
That's
pumping
what
it
I was
in.
gonna say. The AMC that we went to see Garfield at was insane.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
spectacular.
the one in Boston was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I just think Louisville's a market that they don't give a crap about.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll talk about this probably with
Yeah.
George Lucas, and it kind of wraps up into, just again, old versus new, and just the changing of the tide and
Tainting too.
tainting.
Yeah,
the
that's
tainting
true. The
too.
tainting of the tide.
I like that. It sounds really dirty, but
Yeah, it
we're
does.
going with it. All right. Let's get into our review of The Watchers.
The year continues to be bleak for Hollywood and cinemas, though Bad Boys 4 has breathed a little life into the box office this weekend. It's still another in a long trend of franchise films that are wearing their welcome thin. While there have been a few good movies, it's been rare for something truly unique to come along. Every now and then, though, a perfect storm comes along, a rare blend of unique concept and up-and-coming filmmaker gel together to create a sleeper hit or overlooked gem. This week's film, The Watchers, is not one of those instances. Based on the novel of the same name by A.M. Shine and written and directed by Ashana Shyamalan, daughter of the infamous M. Night Shyamalan, in her feature film directorial debut. The Watchers is an occult horror film loosely based on Irish folklore. Shine, the novel's author, is himself from Ireland and has released 2 novels so far, both of which are rooted in Irish folklore. The concept of a modern horror setting using supernatural elements and beings from such lore could have made for a unique and unsettling film. Starring Dakota Fanning as Mina, a young woman estranged from her twin sister who finds herself in the middle of the Irish wilderness, in a place no one who has entered has ever returned from. In the middle of this area is a single structure called only the Coop, where Mina encounters 3 occupants who have also been trapped, unable to leave. Informed of other beings who come to visit the Coop every night, the tenants of the Coop must put themselves on display nightly as they are observed through a 2-way mirror, never able to see their observers, until Mina begins to devise ways to escape, and the truth of the mythical beings is revealed. The Watchers may not be the worst film I've seen this year, but it's certainly one I will never revisit. It's lackluster in nearly every way, offering only an interesting premise that is destroyed by its own narrative and plot holes. Folklore and supernatural stories of any kind generally always pique my interest, especially when it involves lore from other countries and cultures I may not be familiar with. Nothing is more human than carrying forward old legends and lore from generation to generation, reshaping them into something new and modern while remaining faithful to the history of these shared stories. Ishana Shyamalan in her film The Watchers does nothing clever or unique with the story, and does nothing to bolster, honor, nor promote this folklore to a wider audience. The film expects its audience to accept all of its plot points and details at face value, offering paltry explanations for things or pulling explanations from thin air without explaining how characters came by such knowledge. Some of this is due to the nature of the film's twist, which does explain certain aspects of how the film's primary antagonist knows what they know, but it's so poorly built up that by the point it's revealed, you've already guessed the twist and no longer care. It's not just the plot that is shallow. While there is some attempt at making Mina an empathetic character with a tragic past, the cast generally lack depth. Mina, who is given the most development as main character, is not particularly likable, something that is intentional at first, but she is never given the growth and development to become likable by the film's end. Everyone else exists to either further the plot or to be fodder for the creatures to kill. Ishana has seemingly followed in her father's footsteps in her failure to adapt and make a modern fairy tale / folktale. I have not read the novel the film is based on, but would hope it has better build-up of its plot and less plot holes surrounding how everything that happens in the film even came to be. Having worked as second unit director on M. Night's last 2 films, Old and Knock at the Cabin, Ishana's style so far feels exactly like those movies. The Watchers easily could fit with those films as a terrible trilogy of poor adaptation and modern mythology that is shallow, laughable, and entirely unentertaining. She has retained all of M. Night's worst qualities as filmmaker, and being her first solo film, it's not clear if she has at least any of his good qualities. The Watchers does not bode well for the career of Ishana Shyamalan, but being the daughter of a still mostly famous director with his own production company, I'm sure this will not be her last movie. Uninspired, poorly written, poorly acted, and all around a squandered opportunity to blend old folklore into a modern horror thriller, The Watchers is a film that's only saving grace is that it only cost $11 million to make. So while New Line and Warner Brothers will probably break even, The Watchers will barely be a blip in Hollywood history. I give The Watchers 1 out of 4 stars.
Wow.
Okay.
Ooh,
Okay.
1 out of 4 stars.
It was a
Not
duty.
Impressed
It
with
was a
that.
duty.
That showing from Shamalama Ding Dong's
Shamalama
daughter.
Ding Dang Dong.
What's her name? Ishana? Is it Ishana?
Ishana. Ishana, so I would say Ishana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because her name's Ishana, and then
The lady that wrote it, Shine, isn't it?
Guy.
A.M. Shine.
It's a guy who
A.M.
wrote it.
or
A.M. Shine.
A
A.M. Shine.
guy wrote this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
They're based on.
It's questionable.
Well, okay, he didn't write the movie. He wrote the book.
It is Pride Month.
And there's two. He has 2 novels out so far, and they're both based on Irish folklore. So
Okay.
I
just heard that apparently on Reddit, a lot of people were like,
I
why'd
don't know-
she make a movie of a terrible book.
Yeah, they said that some people on Reddit thought the book was terrible too, as far as like the plot. Some of the questions we had as far as plot holes go, I guess are apparent in the book too. As, like, not explained. Like they try to explain it kind of like, okay, this big structure in the middle of the woods, where if you get that far, you can't return, and all they explain in the movie is, well, he would take no more than 13 workers, at a time, because then people would notice they're missing. And I'm like, okay, so he got them into the woods to build it, but how did they get all the equipment, the vehicles? You never see the vehicles. Like the construction equipment couldn't have gotten back out if nobody can get back out.
Yeah. And
it's
that, along with
there's a lot of things that aren't really explained just by that one statement.
She has that blurb at the very beginning as well, where she's like, some people say that you go to the woods to find blah, blah, like, it's as if she's speaking about this particular place, and then we immediately cut to the guy, the introduction of the guy, that kind of sets up the whole film, and him trying to. It seems like he's trying to find his way to this place, almost as if like it's an urban legend come true, and of course people just
trying to escape, but
right,
and he lost his friend,
right,
but
already,
I don't.
They're just there were pieces where it was not only a jumbled mess in terms of the lore that it was trying to build, it even just stops trying to intrigue you with that lore to the point where there's no mystique. It's just we're gonna have endless exposition of what it is we're trying to say.
Do the lore justice either. It's like, okay, this is a story based on Irish folklore, which I appreciate. Like, I think it's cool to like learn like new folklore and things like that, and that's a way to modernize folklore and continue it on throughout human history. But then when you make a story like this that doesn't explain anything about that folklore and pretty much is so awful that it's like, okay, is the folklore that stupid, or is it just your movie was terrible? And I would probably go with the latter, because I mean, folklore, like, again, is just folklore throughout history. But I thought the movie did a terrible job of even, with the whole fairy theme. Like even Sean said, leaving the theater, like modern day audiences are like, their ideas of fairies are going to be like you said, Tinkerbell, which again wasn't originally the idea of what a fairy was, but that's what Disney has cemented in people's minds of what a fairy is.
Right.
And it's like, to not even explain like this Irish idea of these more or less demonic beings. It's like you just they spew stuff out and expects you to take everything at face value, and I hated that. I'm like, none of this makes sense. You just expect me to accept it because you say it's.
Oh, that was exactly my issue with it. I mean, I ended up falling on, I think, a little bit more generous than you all, which is perfectly fine. I ended up, I think, going along with 1.5.
Oh wow!
And the only reason I gave it the half star was the first.
Yeah,
I'm going to be generous.
That was generous.
I'm going to say the first half hour of the movie, I was intrigued by. From the setup and from the instance that you meet Dakota Fanning's character, yes, she's apathetic and she seems like somebody that I'm not going to care about, but I was hoping the movie could convince me along the way to care about her. I agree that the payoff / the entire illustration of her whole tragic past is it's just garbage. It doesn't make you emote in the right ways that you expect to. I also think too that, the intrigue they build with her trying to escape her life, and like even to the point where you see her putting on like wigs and going out.
Using a different accent and everything.
I thought, okay, there's going to be something.
They don't. That doesn't have a payoff.
The only payoff is that she's just tired of being herself. She wants to get out of life and get away and run from it all.
But that's what the fairies were trying to do too.
Well, exactly, and they
don't start connecting themes. We're going to give the movie more credit than it deserves.
Way more than it deserves.
Like you're gonna come up with a theme that's definitely not in the movie, and people will be like, "Well, that actually sounds good."
Yeah. And if Shauna ever heard this, she'd just like, "That's it.
What I was going for.
It right there." No, but Shauna, so I was a little bit more generous. But what'd you end up?
I ended up on 1 as well. And I thought that was generous. I thought the movie was just terrible. I thought the plot was all over there wasn't one. The acting was horrible, which is really weird because like Dakota Fanning's a good actress.
Yeah, she is.
And she has definitely proven her worth in other films. And I thought for sure her monotone, kind of reserved, emotionally, like all of that at the beginning of the movie was going to, like you said, come to like kind of a full circle towards the end where she has to confront her past and emotionally kind of break down and that would lead her to escaping. Like somehow or another that growth that she experiences through the film would lead her or assist her in getting out of this forest. But it ends up being just a really stupid turn of events that helped them escape.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I got up and went and took a crap in the middle of this movie and didn't care. Like normally,
Now wait a sec. You sent us a picture and you discovered something in the bathroom.
Yeah, there's things watching him in there.
There were.
Oh yeah.
You tapped on the mirror.
I was tapping the glass. Yeah. No, that's how bored I was with this film. Yeah. That I was more entertained by the mirror in the bathroom and myself in the mirror than I was by this film.
Honestly, this movie and ISS, to me, are tied for worst movies of the year. Those were both just terrible.
I think I was
movies.
more disappointed with this or with ISS though than this.
I had higher hopes for ISS.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I actually would think it was a better movie.
You think ISS is better
actually,
than this?
yeah.
I don't know. They're both terrible acting, and there's less plot holes, I guess, in ISS. It's just a dumb movie with terrible acting.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I just
bad. I recently, and I don't know if you guys were able to watch it yet or not, but recently I watched the Arcadia movie with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I've heard it's good.
So there's so many similarities between this movie and that movie. That I know that movie takes place in the English countryside, whereas this one's in Ireland. But in both films, there's an entity that lives in the ground that comes out of burrows. They only come out at night. They only have so many hours in the day that they can freely move about and fix things and do things and prepare. And then at night, these things come, and there's so many different. And they have to escape this countryside, just like these people have to escape this forest. There were so many similarities, but that other movie, even though, and I'm going to tell you, when you watch it, there's some questionable CGI and some questionable stuff about the creature design. I think it's great. The creature design is just like nothing you've ever seen before. But that movie was way better than this. But the stories are so similar that I can't help but wonder, and I need to look it up, but if Arcadia may have been based on the same book or based on a similar story. Yeah. But it is very, very similar to the point where I'm like...
It reminds me some of The Village, too.
I was thinking... In terms of look and feel...
Well, I'm just talking about, they're stuck in the middle of this wood. So, granted, they're not trapped in the same way. Without revealing the spoiler of that movie. But, I mean...
It's been long enough.
Yeah, but they're not... Obviously, it's the town keeping them in there rather than something else. But the fact that, they go in their homes and lock up because these things, they are only there at night, which aren't real. But it's just certain aspects of it. And, again... Ideas are recycled all the time. I don't think they were drawn to make this movie because of The Village or A.M. Shine copied The Village.
They're not,
because there is a very different... It's extremely different. I'm not trying to say the
Yeah, I was going to say, they don't only come out at night.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I remember back in the 90s, we had, Volcano and Dante's Peak. You had two, and then you had Deep Impact and Armageddon. Yep. You had two movies that were almost identical. That's how this and Arcadia fit. It's just you made two films, two different directors, two different writers, but it's the same story. It's the same theme.
Right.
And a lot of the details of the story are the same.
Honestly, in a very, very terrible way. I mean, as far as them coming out at night, when I thought of I Am Legend. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought about this guy just alone in the city.
Again,
and I was
they live down in a burrow and come out at night. And
so it is funny that and that's I think the intrigue was there with similar premises that I had seen from other stories and other movies.
Yeah.
With this one, except for the fact that, again, with the Shyamalan, this is what pisses me off the most about him or even his daughter now is there's this mystique around the name that you think, oh, they're gonna be clever.
Yeah.
And it never ends up that way anymore.
Not anymore, no.
Sadly, the last clever thing he did was probably, I would argue, The Visit. You could say Split, but the only thing that was really clever about Split was the twist at the end that it was tied into Unbreakable.
Split was a good movie, but it wasn't as far as a clever twist on the story.
It was just an okay movie, and you thought, oh well, he's taken. I mean, with The Visit being low budget, Split even being limited budget with Anya Taylor-Joy's breakout and even James McAvoy, you're like, okay, he's working his way back up the ladder. He's had a lot of duds since The Happening, and then you had After Earth, and then you had freaking Last Airbender. I mean, just flop after flop after terrible flop. And yet you're thinking, oh, he finally does have some legs. He's getting it back in him. And Glass was a letdown, but it was okay. It was
It
still
wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't as good as
and it was
Unbreakable.
part of that universe of, okay, this is an extended, superhero universe without being Marvel. I was okay with that. I'm fine with that. But man, after Old, Knock at the Cabin, now has this. We don't know about Trap. It comes out in August.
Well.
But if it's anything, but that's the thing. I'm so.
You don't know anymore, yeah.
He has such a signature way of making his films, but none of them are nearly as good as, and I'll go on record and say, and I've said it on the show before, I like everything up to The Village.
Yeah.
Everything post Village is where it falls off for me. After, once we get to Lady in the Water, it's bad.
Yeah.
I like everything up to that point.
Yep. No, I agree with that.
And in my mind, I know a lot of people rag on The Village. I think it's well done for what it is, and it has the typical Shyamalan look and feel. But I ultimately think it's a very good movie. I just think it was marketed poorly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of those that I'm just like, when you see the trailer and you see they're watching, and sometimes I just want the mystery and I want a little bit of the breadcrumb to let me know it. But the moment you start filling it with like all this lore and like not only spoon feeding it, but force feeding it to me, and there's no dots that are connected, and you take away all the intrigue and you just add in a bunch of like milquetoast, fantasy nonsense, I'm just tuned out at that point.
Even then you've got the whole like the like crossbreeding thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do they have to go into this guy hooking up with a
just so that she could escape the forest and get out of there?
Well, the whole point of them watching, or at least according to
study
was to study and learn, and so that they could mimic them, but they never do that. It's like all of them are still in the forest. None of them have ever left until they crossbreed.
I'll give one positive thing I can say about Lady in the Water. It was better than this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the acting in Lady, that's the other thing, is like even with his poor movies, even with Knock at the Cabin, which I hated that movie, even that film, there was some good.
What's his name?
Batista was good.
Batista was
and
good.
Some of it was very well acted. Just poorly written.
Yeah, I mean, at least in you had Paul Giamatti.
Lady
in the Water.
Yeah,
Lady in the Water had it was an overall terrible story, but I mean, it has moments of creativity that I can kind of respect. I just wish it had. The execution on that movie was terrible.
Well, and it's like he went to tell a fantasy bedtime story, but then the fantasy was lost by the time it came into the real world. And I'm like, you needed more enchantment in the way it was told. And he just tried to tell it was marketed as a bedtime story, but you're like, dude, you just came off The Village. You just came off 4 movies that had twists in them.
Yeah.
We were expecting something, and the twist was like it was a straightforward movie.
Well, and I don't feel like that's his fault, though. It's like you can't blame him because he didn't give you a twist that you wanted. I just think the movie needed, again, marketed better, and also
no, but I think he was full of his own ego.
Yes,
and that's been the problem, I think, for several years, and unfortunately, I think is now it's fallen back into that category since his recent successes leading up to. Because I mean, here's the thing: as much as now Old, I don't know the numbers on it specifically, but I don't think Knock at the Cabin was not a flop. The way it was marketed and it was based on a book, I think it did fairly well.
Really been flops. I think they've all been okay as far as making money, which is why he continues to make movies,
and that's why they continue to allow him to. Yeah, exactly.
So before we get off the topic of M. Night, one of our viewers, Nathan, has asked the question. But he said recently he's heard someone say Shyamalan's, hopefully I said his name right. Yeah. His movies mostly suck, but he's still one of the most original director or storytellers there is today. Nathan says he doesn't necessarily agree, but he wants to know our thoughts.
In some ways, I mean, he does make more original stuff as far as because his last few have been based on books. So in that regard, no. But I mean, Signs, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, The Village, those were all original ideas that I thought were unique.
I would say he's peaked. I think he's done. I mean, and that may be cruel or harsh, but look, when you're considering the greats, I mean, look, and we've even ragged on some greats recently.
Spielberg is one of those.
Yeah,
where I feel like his originality and his genius.
Scorsese
is
recently.
That
His
was
last
that was
two haven't
exactly
been-
who I
have
was
been
bringing up.
lackluster, Yeah.
Killers at the Flower Moon was 3 hours of a bore fest, and I hate to say it because he's a phenomenal director and he's got plenty of his own pedigree that he can point back to and say, all right, no, I'm a master of cinema, but I hate to say it, sometimes you got to hang up your hat.
Yeah.
And I think Shyamalan has, he's a one-trick pony that had a really great start. And granted, who knows what those early years of trying to get into the industry and learning, and these are stories and ideas that, I watched on the DVDs. I every single time a new movie of his would come out, I'd rush to get it because I wanted to watch the special features. I was a huge M. Night fan. He's the director I idolized growing up. And that changed after Lady in the Water. I was still willing to give him a chance, but he kept consistently proving to me that, his best days are behind him. I had a little bit more. Even one that was off the radar, but he produced it well before The Visit, but I thought was pretty decent, but I think it's because he didn't direct it, was Devil.
Oh, yeah, that would be
Devil
really
was actually really well done, very suspenseful, and actually a good kind of, underlying Catholic message. And it's funny because I think he's Hindu. Or he may be Buddhist. I know he's an Eastern religion.
Or he may not. India would be Hindu normally.
Yeah, and I know like when you look at signs, he went to Catholic school when he was younger, so I know he has he understands the Catholic background.
Yeah,
and so he's better at adapting its morals and messages in his films.
Yeah, true.
Especially within a Christian culture.
Yeah,
and so it's weird, but I almost think that I think his best days are behind him. A lot of his cleverness, even in those films, I think are kind of overlooked when you look at the immensity or the immense nature of what cinema is and the 100-year history of cinema. I think M. Night, when it comes to any kind of, where he'll rank in the echelon of directors and filmmakers, I don't think it's going to be towards the top.
He was raised Hindu, attended Catholic school for 10 years, considers himself to be, quote unquote, pretty spiritual, but not religious.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Which, that's that's Hollywood.
It fits right in.
Yeah.
But so to answer Nathan's question,
and again,
point blank,
M. Night didn't do this film, but we would also hope that, his daughter, having seen the films that her father has made and probably been a part of, if not, there and present during the making of some of those films.
Yeah. She was, second unit director on Old and Knock at the Cabin.
Ooh.
And here's the thing. Look, props to a dad for loving his daughter and trying to show her the ways and giving her a chance.
Giving her a leg up, yeah.
And look, this is her first big foray into the Hollywood scene, and she's going to have to live and breathe by the bad reviews. It's not doing well critically or audience scores wise.
Well, here's the thing, and I think this is the case with a lot of his movies too. The budget was only $11 million, and it's already made 12, so it's going to be fine as far as.
And that's look, he
$12 million.
He knows how to market these, but that's the thing. He knows how to market himself in terms of like. He knows how. He knows the industry. He's a smart guy. I can't deny him there. But in terms of creativity, I think his best days are behind him, and I don't think that. We're gonna go see Trap. I think, unfortunately, he lives in my head in the way that Marvel movies do now.
Yeah,
there's enough of a draw there and intrigue that I want to see it do well, or I want to see something clever again.
You want to see return to form,
right?
Yeah.
But I'm almost certain that it's not gonna happen. And I just reluctantly go see these movies, and maybe
every now and then you might still get a good one, like No Way Home or hopefully Deadpool 3. It's like every now and then it's like, okay, y'all do something that while in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter, but it's still in and of itself a good movie.
But the problem though is because of the past, we go into those films with a pretty poor expectation. And I think that's like with the Marvel movies, even if, which I still think Deadpool 3 is going to be good. I don't think it's going to save Marvel by no means. It might give them an opportunity, but I don't think they'll take it. But it's like any of these movies we go into, I think I speak for all of us, especially with Marvel or Star Wars. We're going into it thinking this is going to suck. And I think it's that gets in your head when you go to see a film. So even if it turns out to be somewhat decent, we're still expecting it to be, pretty bad. And I don't know. I just feel like Marvel has, like you said earlier, it's like tainted.
Yep.
I think Marvel has
The
tainted
tainting of
its
the tide.
reputation.
Tainting of the tide.
Yeah.
Which and it's
And,
funny you bring that up because that is one of our headlines.
Yeah.
And
The
I think
tainting of
maybe
the tide?
Tainting of the tide.
We can, yeah, I think we've. Look, Shauna, like, I'm willing to give you another chance, maybe, I guess, but this movie is terrible.
Well, maybe, and look, honestly, I'd say go out on a limb, try something original. Don't adapt anything.
She did write and direct, I think, like 6 episodes of The Servant on Apple Plus, which is
Apparently
his
it's
show,
gotten
and
rave
that's
reviews.
supposed to be a good
Yeah.
show. So maybe she does have it in her, just like M. Night has it in him. It's just gets lost somehow.
And maybe,
I don't know.
who knows? But real quick, we're going to move on to headlines. And if Nathan is still watching, don't want to get into details, but hey, man, praying for your son. Hope everything is going well, and he's recovering at home now. So keep us up to date with that. All right, let's roll into our headline open. All right, Sean brought it right up there beautifully.
Beautiful.
So we got to talk about it.
A big, beautiful.
Disney
Word I
is
cannot say.
trying so hard to course correct with Marvel with this latest rumor that potentially the keys to the kingdom will be handed off to the Deadpool Wolverine director
Sean Levy.
to helm Avengers 5. What do we think about this?
I mean, haven't seen what he's done with Deadpool yet to know if that's a good idea or not. So it's kind of like, I mean, that obviously shows that they have a lot of confidence in him, if true.
Yeah.
But granted, I mean, I don't expect Deadpool to be a terrible movie, but that doesn't also mean that
I got to take the lower down.
Uh-oh.
I made a
What did
boo-boo,
you do?
guys.
What did you do?
I put Disney.
Disney.
I got the N and the E backwards.
That's all you need.
Oh, I
That's
just
all you
realized
need.
it. Oh man, we're taking.
I mean,
that off.
him and because he did Free Guy with Ryan
Yeah,
Reynolds,
yeah.
Sean Levy. So it's
Yeah.
like,
I was gonna say I knew they had worked together
Yeah.
on something before.
so he's not a bad director as far as the action comedic element goes. He
Which
seems
one
like
was it? Free Guy.
Free Guy.
Yeah,
Free
that was
Guy,
great.
Yeah,
Real
that's what I'm saying.
Steel. Did you ever see that with Hugh Jackman?
That one was okay.
It was okay, but for
It
its
wasn't
time,
bad.
I felt like it was a decent.
No, I don't
fun
think he's a
family
bad
film.
director.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he's right for Avengers yet.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I think he's a great match for Deadpool after, his work with Reynolds and with Free Guy, but
Well, and unfortunately, I just think the damage is done at this point with Marvel in general. It's going to take more. We've said it already. It's going to take more than just one movie.
well, you need a trend of good movies.
Yeah.
that, and then also it's like, yeah, why are you even thinking about Avengers 5 at this point? Like the Kang Dynasty is
Well,
what
they're
that
still
one was
building
supposed
towards
to be.
it, so
But what are they building towards?
again,
Nobody knows.
I say there's the other rumor
That doesn't mean they're not
that
gonna still
Kang is
build
still
towards
going
something.
to be the big
yeah,
bad.
Or
Or that
they
they'll-
haven't abandoned Kang yet.
We
know
don't cast him.
Well, we do know Secret Wars is still coming. That was
Yeah.
Avengers 6, and I've dropped plenty of hints throughout all the movies that absolutely they're still doing that storyline. It's just
Well, they were even
our fans going to
hinting
care
at-
anymore.
They were hinting at there being Avengers versus X-Men.
Yeah.
They talked about that after Avengers 6, after they've launched the X-Men movies, which that again is fine. That's a comic book. That's a storyline from the comics, but it doesn't matter if you don't build anything worthwhile up to it. It's like you could have all these like Secret Invasion was a massive story event in the comics that was amazing, and they turned into a Disney Plus series that was terrible and had nothing to do with the comic
Yep.
storyline. Fans didn't care, and I didn't even watch it, and so far it has no impact on. I thought at least it might have some impact on the Marvels, considering that the whole Skrulls storyline and Nick Cage has such a huge plot line with the Marvels.
Nick
but it
Fury?
didn't. Nick Fury,
Yeah.
yeah, I said Nick Cage.
That's okay.
But
He's on
yeah.
the brain.
yeah, well, it is funty, but it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, this is stupid because it doesn't play into
Yeah.
anything. So what's the point of it?
Well, and I also thought it was funny that I think what kind of got me onto this soapbox too about it not having any, return is, again, they're not learning from their past mistakes.
No.
It just came out that they are including, what was it from She-Hulk?
Well, that's
That's a rumor too. Yeah.
Oh, it's rumor.
That
Okay.
she'll be
And
one of the
again-
new Avengers.
Well, she's been an Avenger since the 80s, so like that
Yeah.
again doesn't bother me. But it's like okay, but
You've
already tainted the character.
Yes, you've already ruined the series, and it sits so poorly in real fans' mouths that it's like, why would you continue with this?
Yep.
This
I think you should, but it should be done better. And that's the hard thing is like as a comic fan, it's like I would want them to correct their wrongs with She-Hulk, but I don't trust that they will. So it's one of those things where it's like,
But
when I s-
what is that in your mind? What does correct the wrongs with She-Hulk?
I mean, you would have to...
Same actress, different story, or just completely
the actress
wipe out?
isn't necessarily the problem as much as the writing and directing.
Yeah, but
unless she
how
wants
do
to skew
you...
it. You just make something with her in it that's better, but that's the problem, is convincing people to go back to see it. It's like you have to make better movies and better stuff without all the garbage, but they don't know what the garbage is. So it's like, yeah, include her in Avengers 5, that's fine, she should be there. But if she's going to be the same character written terribly with a movie that's written terribly, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I want to see these characters done justice, because the characters in and of themselves aren't necessarily bad from the comics. It's what they've done with them in the shows that have been terrible. Now, some of the characters have always been, like Ironheart's garbage and always has been. That's just...
Doesn't look like they're continuing with her.
They say the series is still in production. That's one of the series I think that's been in post-production for years. They just don't know what to do with it because of the poor reception.
Almost like the poor reception that there was with the Falcon.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
But it's Captain America
4. They changed it's funny because they changed the title, because it was New World Order and now it's something else.
Brave New World.
Brave New World, yes. Now it's Brave New World because you can't... New World Order might sound a little too pushy, like, you know.
Yeah.
They're trying to...
correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a racist movie called Brave New World?
I don't think so.
Isn't that what, or is it Brave World? I thought there was one that's touted as like racist or something from back in the day.
That was I know what you're talking about, but it's not called Brave New World. It's
maybe I'm thinking of it because there is a book called Brave New World, but I don't think it was the racist.
No, that Brave New World's definitely a generic term I've heard in other stuff. So
but there's like,
I mean, New World Order's a generic.
Yeah,
true.
Well.
But there's like I thought there was, because I know like 1984 is an Orwellian.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
But
I just can't think of the movie, because they did a remake of it a couple years ago, I'm pretty sure.
I'm almost
which
certain.
is funny.
I'm just curious now because I want to know. I know. Not that they're going to tie it in with that, but I thought there was like a notable like.
There's a 1931 novel.
That's what it is.
Dystopian novel by English author Aldous Huxley.
Because a lot of people associate. They're two kind of dystopian futures that people dread, and it's the Orwellian 1984 and the Brave New World.
Well, I think
world
in some way, like there is, because I mean, even Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended with like the whole like after the blip and countries trying to like figure out their borders and all this, and there were some interesting ideas actually brought up in that I didn't think were too woke towards the end of that, but I just don't trust Disney to follow on with that and not be.
Well, that's all I
crazy.
expect to see. I mean, if there's any kind of tie-in with the novel at all, it's in just a correlation.
Just theme. It'll just be in theme,
right?
Yeah.
And it'll be poorly done because it'll interject its own woke ideology with the themes of that book to try to overwrite what that.
But
book
the latest
really stands
rumor
for.
of that movie was that its test screening was atrocious.
Yes.
So,
right. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. It almost seems like everything that Marvel has touched within the last 3 years is just already starting out with a sour taste in people's
they're in a
mouth.
hole, because it's like even if you make something good, you've lost the trust. Because that's what I'm saying. I could say, yes, I want them to do She-Hulk better and do her justice, but you've already lost people's trust. So even if you make like a new She-Hulk project that's amazing, a lot of people may never see it because they don't trust it. And I mean, that's the problem Hollywood has.
Well, this is
with
the
a lot
same
of
thing
stuff.
we talked about with Rings of Pooh.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way you can course correct from season 1.
It's like, how do you make so like even if you
just
start
have to retcon it?
Yeah.
You would.
That's the only way. Yeah.
And at this point, it's like,
honestly, that's what I think Marvel
There's just
should
no
do.
way they could.
They just need to end the MCU as we know it. That should have ended at Infinity Wars. Give it a couple years and do like more
reintroduce a
stories.
new band of characters.
Yeah, be something different. Like do like I talked about the Wasteland podcast that I love that's set in the old Logan universe. It's like do something like that where you make a Wasteland trilogy that's disconnected from the rest of the MCU, still uses all the same characters, but because it's something of its own thing, like Joker with DC, it's like it would be fine. You don't have to connect to this greater whole. Everybody already knows enough Marvel characters now that you don't have to spend time introducing Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. It's like we already know who they are. You don't have to reintroduce everybody.
Right.
So just take these awesome stories from the comics and adapt them into movies.
But you've also got to give it time to breathe so
Yeah.
that we can enjoy. I mean, that's been part of the biggest issue with them leading off from the Infinity Saga and leading into the new Marvel is they tried to do this crossover of the passing of the torch from the old guard to the new guard. None of the new guard has stuck.
Nope.
Nobody has glommed on
they
to
never
these
have in
characters.
the comics either. There's a reason that even though Captain America died at one point, Steve Rogers comes back. Like, yes, Falcon was at one point Captain America in the comics. he's still not Captain America. Steve Rogers has come
Yeah.
back because it's fun for a little while.
Nerdrotic points this out all the time with Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
He's Spider-Man.
And then there's Miles Morales.
And there is, and everybody differentiates the two
Right.
because there's a reason. Like, okay, Superman's died in the comics, and they had little replacements for him for a year, and then after a while, he came back. Why? Because nobody gives a crap about the generic Superman, the generic Captain America, generic Spider-Man. You want the actual character.
And I think that's the sad thing of what Marvel, as the MCU under Disney, could have really done well. They could have not only hit pause, but they really could have said, look, it's impractical and you can't continue the story with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, with Chris Evans as Captain America, with Chris Hemsworth as Thor. You can't have these centralized characters continue indefinitely. This isn't comic book world.
Well, I mean, eventually actors age.
Right, and that's my point, is they very well could have set the precedent of saying, we know we've got something golden here, and we know that the traditional method is to not let this die down. We got to keep the train rolling. We can't let it, we got to build up as much anticipation, and they've shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, instead of pedaling backwards, they just kept doubling down, and they've got nothing but just milquetoast characters that nobody cares about. They're all bland, or there's some that you just outright hate because of the way they wrote them.
Yeah.
And yet you're still, so now you're stuck with what you've created. You almost do have to do a reboot method. I mean, think about it. 4 years ago, we would have decried that it would have ever been possible for MCU to be in the same predicament that DC is in.
Yeah.
And now and there's still, tensions there and trepidation with DC and what James Gunn's going to do. But it's like you almost would have never thought the MCU was ever going to end up on a rewrite course. But here you are with these characters that nobody cares about, nobody has an affinity for, and they don't want to see any stories. I mean, it really is kind of, I hate to say it, to the point where you're like, just let it die.
Yeah.
Just let it come to rest. Nobody is that in tune with it's about quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're still a mile wide and an inch deep because there's so many other storylines you haven't let go of, or you've promised the fans who have stuck by your side that there's going to be things that wrap up, or there's going to be things that continue. That's my issue with the She-Hulk thing, and I don't see it becoming something that they can rescue themselves from, because you've already promised too much.
Well, and now they're promising to bring the lovable characters back. I mean, the Avengers 5, the rumor is that it's going to have over 60 characters in it. And
That's insane.
That's Robert
Way
Downey
too
Jr.
many.
That's Chris Evans. That's all of them.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then they're bringing Chris Evans back for a Disney series about him replacing the Infinity Stones. So they're not letting those characters that wanted to just move away from the role, like Robert Downey Jr., they're bringing them back, and all you're doing then is giving people a taste of the old days,
right?
But then you're not gonna,
it's not
you're
like
not
they're
gonna follow through.
On.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they may be in these Avenger movies, but they're not going to keep making other. Like, it's like they only have so much time, anyways.
Yeah,
and I mean, and as far as like,
well, we know it's a hat nod. That's all it is.
It is. Well, it's just you're just going to have cameos here, because obviously you can't center. Yes. Endgame and Infinity War had tons of characters in it, but you already had all of their backstories in previous movies, and the roles they played were well done and balanced. It's like, there's no way. Honestly, I don't think Secret Wars should be one movie anyways. If you're going to do the story justice, it would need to at least be 3 movies, because there are so many characters involved. The comics actually focused on, okay, this part of the story is focused only on the X-Men. This part's focused on Spider-Man. This part's focused on the Avengers. This part's focused on Fantastic Four. And then they all came to kind of together, kind of like how the Infinity Saga worked. And if you did a Secret Wars X-Men, Secret Wars Fantastic Four, Secret Wars Avengers, and then capped it all off with this massive Secret Wars movie, that would make sense. You would have the whole Secret Wars storyline. But as it is, it's like, how are you going to fit all these characters in a single movie? And yes, some plot elements may carry over from Avengers 5. But
it's a mess.
But it's still like, you're not going to be able to fit what makes the story good in one movie anyways, and they're not trying to. They're just trying to dangle keys in front of audience faces by saying, look, here's all these Fox X-Men characters, and here's these characters, and here's Robert Downey Jr. back. Aren't you amazed?
That's one of the things that is worrying me about Deadpool 3, is because, and I think it's going to be fan service, because that's what Ryan Reynolds has done with this character so far. But I really think in Deadpool, because there's so many cameos that are that there's already rumored to be
in the trailer too.
And there's I just saw one the other day as a rumor that Wolverine and Deadpool are going to go through a portal and they're going to actually kill Thanos. They're going to go through a portal and come out at the war, and they're going to just cut his hand off, and it's all done, like super simple. And then they bounce out, and it's supposed to be funny,
but that would ruin.
Ruin the entire thing. But it's kind of like I feel like Deadpool's going to try to bring those fans back in by giving them too many tastes of things that could be that are never gonna come. And that's what I am worried about. I think it's going to be a good movie, but I think there's going to be like so many things that we're just like, oh my God, that would be great if they go this route or if they use this and carry on, and then they're not going to.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Yeah.
No. Alrighty. Is there something worse than Marvel?
Yeah,
of course there is.
I would actually rank right now Star Wars worse than Marvel, unfortunately, only because Star Wars was... Oh, I don't know.
So, I mean, put it this way. Star Wars, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is relatively new. It's not iconic. I don't think even as good as the Infinity Saga was, that it's
hasn't.
I would say it's iconic, but not in the same, nowhere on the same.
Not in the same level of Star Wars.
It's iconic in the cultural phenom it was during our lifetimes, and something that we realize doesn't happen at all, all too often in cinema. Something that a wave of success and a wave of taking
just
the
culture
way they
by
built
storm.
A
cinematic universe hadn't been done like that.
But
that's true.
But it is not iconic in the sense that it has stood the test of time.
No.
And in fact, they're ruining their legacy by what we just talked about, if anything. Whereas Star Wars didn't really set out to create that kind of legacy, but it became that when after multiple generations of young people and parents who grew up with the spectacle that was, before even the summer blockbuster existed. I mean, really, they all credit, Jaws with being the kickoff to the summer blockbuster. And it's like, with Star Wars being the big, huge spectacle event of special effects and what it set the precedent for what to expect at the cinema and what you could go see.
Well, it revolutionized special effects,
And I mean, so it's incredible to see what its lasting legacy was, only for it to be crapped on after the original creator sold it off to Disney, the highest bidder at the time.
Yeah.
George Lucas walked off into the sunset with his $4 billion in hand and was happy. Happy little lark.
I think it's his last troll against the fans that
and honestly,
rejected him.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's the best way to put it.
He's just like, screw all, you hated me.
Still thinking that it was probably a couple years old now. That when AI face Face Mash was just getting started, but it was still pretty good. And they had George Lucas said at like a round table, and every time they asked him about something, Star Wars.
That's just him. It's so perfectly him.
Good.
And
that's what I think of. I think of that stupid little chuckle every time. I think of like Kathleen Kennedy and like South Park episodes that are decrying everything that came of, of Star Wars.
And this isn't a defense of Marvel. I think Marvel still, every now and then, movies like No Way Home or Deadpool, or they still have a few that are decent and that aren't as laser focused, I think, on like woke ideology. Kathleen Kennedy has made that like the point of every Star Wars project.
True.
It's like, I'm not saying Marvel's innocent, they're not, but at least every now and then you can get something that's like, okay, this was fine for what it is. It's like there's nothing left of Star Wars that's not trying to shove something down your throat that I'm just like, this isn't even what Star Wars was.
No
the
pun
Acolyte
intended.
looks, I haven't watched it, but all the trailers I've seen, I'm like, this doesn't even look like Star Wars to me.
No.
I don't want to watch it. I don't plan to.
No, and from what I've heard, a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
No, or the
it's only got 4 million views. The highest of 2024, though.
But it's like they have that, and that's only the first 2 episodes. But people have come out and just, I mean, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes,
bonfire in space, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I know people are trying to argue there's been fire in space in Star Wars. There's been explosions when they shoot each other. There's not just this.
It dissipates.
There's not just this bonfire just.
It's like there's clearly no oxygen. They're not freaking. It's not.
They're
fire.
out on this ship in space shoots because they can't breathe, and here's this flame just flickering. Just like I'm just like, what is that?
Nope, that's not possible.
I mean, yeah. Overall,
I know it's science fantasy, not science fiction, but there's still only an extent to which you can stretch my disbelief.
Well, again, you have to start. This has always been a point of contention with any kind of film, whether it's making a new creative universe or an existing one. You set the bar. The moment you have this bar, if you cross it and and you go above it, it's like, okay, you've ruined it. You've broke the illusion.
Yeah.
And to me, Lucas defending, because that's exactly what his point was here. He's defending his old creation because people are saying, well, it's all white. It's all they didn't have enough diverse
It wasn't woke
cast.
enough back then,
Right?
Yeah. Because they weren't concerned with such BS.
Well, because
like 90% of the characters are
that's exactly
aliens,
what he said,
or
and that's what he
from
said.
a different planet.
But he also brings it because he talks about they're all white men and like, but he's like, okay, well, in the first film, New Hope, Han and Luke only survived the Death Star because of Leia's quick thinking. Like, you have this kid who's in over his head and this smuggler who's just there for the payday, and she's like, okay, like, get out of the way, you all are idiots. So it's like, and no, she's not maybe the center of the entire film. Luke's the main character, but she's still displayed from the
Strong
get-go
female
as a strong
presence,
female presence. So he's like, I don't understand acting like that doesn't exist. And then he mentions Lando. He's like, he was black. It's like, but because having one black person in there or one female in there isn't good enough anymore. It's like you need one white person and everybody else should be something else. And it's like, but that's not, again, like he said, most of the characters are aliens. He's like, I wasn't trying to depict, I mean,
he specifically points out that a lot of what the messaging was that it, this is a world of multiculturalism and multi-ethnic, backgrounds because it's across the galaxy, and that ultimately it didn't matter who you run into. They all treated each other. You had your good characters and your bad characters. It's like you have your Jabbas who are the crime of the underworld, and it's a nasty looking creature. And then you got other people who you see across the cantina there, and they're sitting there playing their instruments.
That's why he says the idea is all people are equal.
Yeah. And so I'm like, you have this message that easily was not something that the filmmakers, George Lucas and the rest of the crew were tainted with, and they were not concerned with back when the originals were created. Because again, heaven forbid, you have creative people sitting around in a room thinking of a cool concept, and we're just thinking, this is the movie I want to make, and that's what they made. And look, there's no mystery behind the struggle that was the original Star Wars, and the things that George Lucas went through to, one, get it made, but also he thought it was going to be absolutely awful and terrible.
Yeah, he thought it was going to be a flop.
He thought it was going to be a terrible flop, and it was horrible up until they get it in the editing room, until they added James Earl Jones' iconic voice to Darth Vader. And yet here you have these iconic, classic moments in cinema preserved by just creatives who wanted to put something memorable on film, and it ends up, cementing itself in film history, in our culture. And yet it wasn't about appropriating some culture or putting into perspective some ideology and shoving it down your throat. It simply was to make something that was entertaining, that had a message that was universal, that could transcend all types of cultures and generations. Yeah. And that is the thing that I think Lucas is defending the most, and rightfully so, with his not only original creation, but this is something that Hollywood has lost. It really is a struggle for their own soul to get it back. They don't have people in Hollywood right now that are actually out there to create art. They're creating things that are speaking on, for a purpose and for some ideological reason. They don't actually have I mean, every once in a while we get hidden gems. Every once in a while you get a Fall Guy that sadly people aren't turning up to the theater to see because of all the other woke nonsense. Because Hollywood has shot themselves in the foot too many times. They've made it about themselves and the drum that they beat there that nobody else pays attention to or cares. As Keith said on the show once before, you're a monkey. Dance, monkey, entertain me. That's the whole point. And when Hollywood forgot that message and cared too much about what it is they wanted to cram into a movie, this is why you've gotten the series you've gotten with Star Wars. And unfortunately, even with the more popular parts of the franchise under Disney's direction, primarily under Kathleen Kennedy's direction, something like The Mandalorian, they still, go back on the right message because you had someone like Gina Carano, who was a fan favorite, and because she tweeted something that apparently a couple of people on the set or a part of the crew and a part of Disney's, woke mob beat her down over, they fired her. They got rid of her because she had, we have a strong female voice, but not the right strong female voice. So she has to be an outcast. She's a leper. So look, it's a bunch of nonsense that any one of these people are tolerant in any way, shape, or form other than their own ideological beliefs. And this is something that's perverse and is pervaded throughout Hollywood these days. And it really is a wokeness and a disease that is going to have to die by the wayside, or I'm sorry, Hollywood as we know it is over. You'll maybe get big blockbusters here and there from certain causes, but look, if they're flops like Fall Guy or flops like Furiosa even, doesn't matter whose name is behind it. If they don't turn a profit, those days are done. And nobody's going to be doubling down on huge big budget movies if they're losing billions of dollars in profit year over year. So I don't know. Time will tell, but rightfully so. George is sticking up for his original creation, and the fact of the matter is, he doesn't have to, because let's face it, who the hell is watching the new shit anyway?
Yeah,
they're not. Most people are turning to the old generation and the old. I mean, look, this is where we've had our newfound love for the new trilogy, episode 1, 2, and 3. And we've completely written off.
Newfound. I've never hated those. They just fun to make fun of. Like,
I think when they came out, I definitely thought, okay, the original 3 were better.
Oh, when they came out, I was in high school.
And he could do better. But now that I've seen what Disney can do, I'm like, George Lucas was brilliant.
I loved Phantom Menace. I was 9 years old when it came out. Now as I got older, I was like, this is garbage.
See, and this is where I hate it, because I can just hear George now. He's like, it was made for kids. Which is BS.
It is BS.
Kids' movies don't talk about trade deficits and trade
all the political, all the socio-economical
Now as I got
stuff,
older, I didn't like the prequel trilogy anymore once I realized, like, in comparison, it was garbage. And then as I got even older still, like you said, and saw Disney, I was like, no. I was right to enjoy those as a child.
Midichlorians were the way to go.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's sad when the critiques of episode 1, 2, and 3 are far better critiques of movies in general and stories, because you yearned for them to be better and there was potential, versus any critique of the new stuff, because most of the new stuff is such garbage that you don't even really have to point out that it's garbage. Your main critique is just, I have to waste my time on this. Like, thank God we don't have to, because we don't really review TV shows. But the weight of crap that you would have to endure to even, I mean, and look, we reviewed, and favorably even. Like, again, it's probably one of my biggest regrets, and I'd go back and redo this show. But reviewing and favoring things like Rise of Skywalker, and at the time giving it a favorable review, being thrilled with the retconning from episode 8.
Yeah.
But even still, it's like 7, 8, and 9 are so not only forgettable, such a narrative mess.
Well, they're just disjointed, and just none of it makes sense, really.
At least those movies felt like Star Wars to a certain extent. None of the shows that they're coming out with feel like, even Obi-Wan felt like it was an Obi-Wan show outside of Star Wars. Like, it just did not have the feel. And I can't even imagine this Acolyte show. I don't plan on watching it, but I've been reading, and of course I've seen the trailer. It doesn't look... My issue is, like, they can't keep their mouths shut about the shows. To have the director come out and say, this is the gayest Star Wars yet.
I know.
And I'm like, shouldn't you be saying it's the best Star Wars yet?
No, I don't care. It's the same difference to her.
But I know, but I'm just like, if that's your goal, is to make the queerest Star Wars you can make, then your goals are all wrong. And that obviously shows that the goals of the company are all wrong.
And it's just like what Keith said, and even what the actress right next to her said. She said, well, nerds are gay. They're in my head, they're gay. It is. Their entire identity is wrapped up in this woke messaging. Whether it's being gay, whether it's being trans, whether it's their entire message and theme is wrapped up in promoting that. And if it doesn't have anything to do with that, at least for a majority of what you're watching, well, then it isn't good enough. It's not art.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that has become that's become the, I guess, upper crust and the elitist, drumbeat of what Hollywood has been for the last several years. I mean, that's why when we walk out of a movie and we're pleasantly surprised with it not being woke, or at least not having those kind of themes or messages.
Yeah, it's like we throw a star at it just because it isn't woke.
Exactly. And it's sad
you did such a good job. You deserve this.
We have watered down our expectations so much because this nonsense has pervaded the landscape for so many years now, at least the last 4 or 5 years, half a decade. And it's unfortunate and a disappointment that we have to think in those terms, but all they're hoping for at any point of any of this is for the slightest little budge of the audience to say, I don't care, it's Star Wars, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
And if that's all they get, then they've won. Because if they can shove this amount of crap down your throat and you walk away saying that you're even the least bit satisfied, well, then they've done their job. That's exactly what they're hoping for. They want it to be so much at the forefront that even when they back off just a little bit, you're thinking, well, this is great. It's not being force-fed anymore. It's not the main theme of the show. Oh, no. They'll still find a way to make it in there. They're just hoping that they can slide it in there to some other stuff, and we'll be like, man, this is so much better than The Acolyte. This is so much better than Ahsoka, so much better than Obi-Wan. That's all they're hoping for. Just that little bit of a reprieve from enough fans that they keep consuming it. And that's why the best answer, unfortunately, really is to just consume the old stuff. Because trust me, we've said it multiple times on this show, they're paying attention to the metrics. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if George Lucas votes for Bob Iger and not on rock solid foundation.
He's been doing. He's been back for as long as Chapek had the job now. Has it been about a year? Maybe not quite.
Yeah. Oh, it's been over a year.
Yeah. So it's
because it was in the fall of 22.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, okay,
so
what have you done, Bob? What if honestly, it's like you can blame Bob Chapek and say, oh, he crashed the ship in that short amount of time. But it's going to take you longer to redirect it than it took him to. It's because it's been going this trajectory for years, even before Chapek. It's just they want to try to
pin the tail.
They want to try to like make this illusion for audiences to act
right.
like it was all Chapek's fault. We got Iger back, and y'all like Iger. He did Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel. He's responsible for all those great acquisitions. So you should be happy that Iger's back.
Yeah, well, he came in, too, and canceled a bunch of stuff, which also gave people, hope. It's like, oh, well, he's canceling this and canceling that. Those were going to be terrible anyway. But then he just greenlights the other stuff.
He's canceled more stuff that is going to be certifiably a flop, but he's greenlit enough of the crap that he thinks will still sell well that ultimately it still does. It still is filled with people who are doubling down on their ideological bents. And that's going to be the issue is you need someone who willingly will step in and say, this is not the right direction. And if you're not willing to jump ship or course correct, you're done. Get out of the company. You're in the way. Iger doesn't have the stones to do that. He's too in deep. And the thing is he's more worried about getting votes on the board and getting elected to the board. And look, we all know they have the same mindset. They're not going to course correct. It's going to take a really rude awakening, which happens to be a continued stock price plummet or continued flops that come out, month after month in the theaters or even on Disney Plus that are going to speak more volumes. So the best advice we have right now as consumers is to not consume.
Yep.
Don't do it. Don't eat the bull crap.
Really good question in the comments. Is there anyone in the industry that gives you a glimmer of hope when it comes to filmmaking?
Eggers.
I was just going to say indie directors, period. Like in the indie film industry, I think because they don't have the corporate overlords, I definitely feel like indie films are going to have... They've broken out before, but I feel like there's going to be another breakout or even just a bigger breakout. I think
we're starting to see that a little bit already, like with Barbarian, Ty West's trilogy, being... X, Pearl, and now Maxine.
Yeah.
I mentioned Robert Eggers, and I was just making sure that was who I was thinking of, and it is the guy that did
The Witch and
The Witch.
Northman.
I love The Northman.
That was a
and it's like I
fantastic
think
movie.
there's still, like you said, these independent filmmakers that are showing their style and their ability. Now the problem is, do they continue to make great work? Are they going to be, the next Christopher Nolan, who I would say is starting to get a little show his rust as well, or will they let Hollywood turn them into something else? Because unfortunately, even Martin Scorsese at one point was one of the best filmmakers ever and has now made The Irishman, which was fine but not great, and then Killers of the Flower Moon that we already mentioned was just 3 hours too long.
I really do yearn, and I'm not going to pinpoint any specific director or filmmaker. I think it kind of comes in waves, like an Edgar's, like Ty West, definitely. He's made a splash. Jordan Peele, even with his films.
Yeah, I like Peele's
stuff. The Fall Guy, when you hand a movie over to a stuntman, a former
someone
stuntman,
who's in. Oh, who directed John Wick's? Those movies.
I think it's had a couple different
ones. Okay.
The first 2 or 3, I think. Were
I guess all the
same
same
person.
producer.
Yeah. The guy who writes and produces them has been the same.
But Sean, you're right. It's like when you actually turn it over to someone who's in the industry,
Yeah.
who loves what they do and shows a passion for it. I mean, that's really what it is. It's. I think it's going to be I don't even say up and comers. It's going to be handing the reins to people who have a passion for not only filmmaking and are good storytellers, but those who are not jaded and not cynical, or I would say brainwashed by the industry that they have come up in. I mean, there's a reason why I don't have as much disdain for someone like a Leonardo DiCaprio. I can, he the things he says.
No, he's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
But
but the thing is, like, I don't have a disdain for him because I know he's a brilliant actor. But I also know he did nothing. Like, he had no childhood. He grew up in that industry. He grew up in that bubble. And that's my thing is there are genuine blue collar, hardworking individuals part of this industry that all the elites and the upper crust will look down on but applaud and say they're the bread and butter of this film industry. But yet none of them are the ones who are truly in charge of making the decisions of what they make. And unfortunately, that is where we come into play as consumers, and you reward good content. That's why we'll get out there in front and try to applaud a Fall Guy and say, go see it. It's worth seeing. Or even a Furiosa. That wasn't amazing in my mind, but it was a good film.
Yeah.
And it was worth seeing on a big screen. But there are things that come along where, unfortunately, I don't think it's really a wave of new artists. I think, like you were saying, Sean, there's still a lot of hidden gems out there that either drop or some that you find on streaming services that have allowed their ways to penetrate the market. But ultimately, it's so saturated with content right now that it's kind of hard to find what age
they get
we're
lost
in.
in the shuffle.
Yeah,
They
I was
do.
gonna say there's good films out there. There's just way more bad films that you have to filter through.
Or way more bad films on a larger scale.
Yeah.
They're
With a bigger
so
platform.
milk
Well, they're
toast.
constantly churned and pumped out.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I was because you mentioned, I agree. It's really based on the creator and someone who has a passion for the filmmaking and loves that. When you look at even Disney's focused entirely as a brand now. They're not trying to innovate. They're not trying to make films for the sake of making films. It's just let's just churn out content and slap our brand on everything. Disney in the old days still focused on filmmaking. Yes, they were still a brand, that family brand that you knew you could trust, but throughout Disney's history, even through the 90s Renaissance, it was, what can we do that we haven't done before? What type of, how can we make
push the animation?
Yes.
How can we do something new?
It was still about filmmaking and innovating while being a family brand. Now Disney's not even worried about being a family brand. They're just worried about the name Disney being slapped on things that, here's Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, Muppets, here's all this. Eat it up, consume it, because we need your money. We're not really actually worried if these things are good or not.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I just brought up my story time segment lower. I forgot I had moved on to that. It's about that time. I had moved on to it already, and I was trying to throw up the conversation we were just having about, George Lucas, but
Georgie.
We're time. Let's move on to our story time segment. Let's roll that open.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Which I hope we answered that question well enough.
I think we did.
As far as the new generation.
No, he just said, is there anyone in the industry that gives you hope for
okay, so
Hollywood?
he did specifically ask.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned. He said,
one person. Yeah.
I didn't name one. I think I need to name someone.
He just said anyone in the industry. Well, that's why I mentioned Eggers as well. Really, it is. It's just you mentioned quite a few. You said Peele. You said people that
Yeah, but Jordan Peele, I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Who did Beau Was Afraid?
That was Ayers, not Eggers.
Ayers.
Or no, did Eggers?
That was Ari Aster.
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster.
Yeah, Ari Aster.
Talk about some screwed up
Yeah.
Look, he's one
I was so confused by that movie.
But he
I like
also
Eggers
did,
more than Aster, but I do like Ari Aster a lot.
Yeah.
I'd say he did The Witch.
No,
Or was that Eggers?
Eggers did The
Yeah.
Witch.
Oh,
Ari Aster did Hereditary
yep.
and Midsommar.
Yeah.
Midsommar's amazing.
Yeah.
He's got some weird movies.
All of his are messed up, but
But
they're
again,
good.
he's also got his own flair.
yeah.
And I mean, you do have to have your own vision, I think, if you want to stand out from the crowd.
I think Eggers does when you could look at
agreed.
The Witch, Lighthouse, and the I love the Northman. I just love that movie.
And then
I've watched it a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I don't think they have turned out anything recent. Who did? Oh gosh, Baby Driver.
Oh
Who
yeah.
was that? Who did Baby Driver?
I have to look that
Although
up.
I think his last film wasn't that great.
Well, Edgar Wright still makes some good stuff.
It was Edgar Wright.
Was
It
that-
is
yeah, that's what
Edgar
I thought.
Wright.
Yeah,
It's
it was
Edgar
Edgar
Wright.
Wright.
Yeah.
Yep, because we were saying
One
Robert
Night in
Edgers.
Soho wasn't the
That's
best, but it wasn't bad. It was just one of
It was tepid.
It was one of those where it's like, well,
Again,
maybe it's a misfire from him, and the next one will be great. We'll see.
it pretended to be a little bit more clever than it really was.
I think what is his next one? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, look, you're afforded. we can move on to story time.
Yeah,
I just wanted to throw out some names that
There's still talent out there.
I think it's harder. It's going to be harder the more avenues there are to watch and view content. It's going to be harder for certain standouts that are going to be household names like Spielberg, Scorsese, even a Jackson, Zemeckis. Even I mean, you think about Back to the Future and Forrest Gump. I mean, you're talking about names that even if you don't know
Who
like films, you're going to know their names. I mean, Jackson with Lord of the Rings, no doubt. But these other guys we're mentioning, I think, are only going to be known.
Yeah, they're
in
not.
terms of,
Most people, if I say a Robert Eggers film, they're not going to know what the heck I'm talking about.
I think Jordan Peele in the black community, especially, but also in anybody who pays attention to film, he's become kind of a household name.
Yeah,
but I could
so.
see my parents, if they come up with a commercial and advertise his name, he's like, who's that?
Yeah.
They're not going to know.
Well, and he's also, like, while he is popular, his films also are still a little bit more niche in that not everybody enjoys.
And I think that's a good
film.
thing.
Yeah.
Because that's something that he's embraced, which is good. I think that's what maintains his auteur
Yeah, I like Nope.
nature. And I know
a lot of people who didn't, but again, I think it's just that type of. That's a film that I would call more like artouristic. That is a good way of artourism, as far as not freaking Crimes Against the Future or whatever that movie was.
God.
That was awful.
Yeah, Cronenberg.
Yeah, but story time. I guess we should probably get into story.
He's been
time.
I hate it when you all
Yeah,
mention
I
that
know.
movie.
I can't
Because
help it.
I can't
That's
get
like
it
my
now.
go-to.
I'm thinking about it. Thinking about
It's
the
like
Damn
the-
chair.
It has scarred me.
Breakfast chair.
It's like every time
I
I,
know,
think of
God.
like pretentious, just crap garbage that's so pretentious, that's my immediate
Stupidest
go-to now.
movie.
I'm like, that was just the most pretentious piece of poop.
I just, I
can't get
it was garbage.
I'm so smart. Look at my movie.
Freaking
all night now.
and the fact that it got a huge standing ovation, and then it came to award season and nothing, not even nominated. Great, thank God, it was terrible. Alrighty, story time segment is your worst doctor's visit. Let's talk about it. I did put this in the notes to try to give y'all a heads up.
I saw it, but I don't really I don't.
Sometimes those notes, I'm not sure if they're legit or not. So
Oh,
when
yeah.
I saw it, I was like, "That's probably not even
did
really."
Keith put that in there?
No, see, if I had put it in there, it'd be something perverse.
He would
So
he
you
would have
should-
put something about penis.
Yeah,
in there. That's
it
what
would
he
have
did.
been perverse, and then you would have known.
I think my
So,
worst doctor's visit is in the future
Yeah,
because
As you get older?
I haven't had a finger in
I'm
my
s-
butt yet,
Oh yeah,
and I'm thinking that's coming because I'm 41 now.
I think you need to
The
do it.
doctor told me 45 is now the new age that they.
Really?
Like, you're just talking
Yeah.
about like checkups or like anytime you've had to go to a medical
Anytime.
facility.
It could-
because
it
I
could
would
be a
consider
dentist.
like an ER, like a doctor's visit, but like I've never had like a bad like appointment. Like I've never gone to a doctor and had a bad like, oh, this appointment was bad. But yeah, I could think of like having to have like I'm trying to think of something I went to the ER for now because I've had
I know
stitches.
I know one thing you went for that we all were worried about was your heart attack.
That was actually kind of a fun vacation, to be honest with you. Not the night it happened, but the couple days I was in the hospital, not having to worry about anything. I was like, hey, I didn't got to worry about that horrible place I work at anymore for a couple days.
And you shortly after
probably
that,
That's
Gave
probably
you
what
the heart
caused. That's
attack.
probably what
oh,
gave
no
me the
doubt.
heart attack.
I think stress
Yeah.
definitely led to that.
I say I went to work like the day after I got out of the hospital.
Of course you did,
So,
you
I mean,
maniacal maniac.
I just like, yeah. Well, they never did. Like they thought it was probably stress related. Like it was weird. But yeah, that one I guess would be the most serious. But even within the context of my mind, like after knowing like everything that's come from that since then, I'm like, I don't attribute that as like my worst visit, oddly enough.
Well, no, and I
it
guess
definitely was the most, like, obviously at the time.
I'm
like,
twisting it
yeah.
a little bit.
Well, no, I mean,
I'm just saying worst could mean the scenario.
yeah.
Or it could be like you're petrified and like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
want to go back to the doctor.
Yeah.
And I've never felt that, but I've
I
definitely
love
had.
the dentist, to be honest with you. I don't have bad
God.
dental.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
They don't.
I don't like it either.
What?
No.
Oh. I've never
just
had
here's
a
the thing.
bad visit at the dentist. Like, I mean, I've had dental work done, but I've never been in pain or fear, so I've not cared.
I mean, confession time.
Yeah.
I just went to the dentist back in, I think it was February.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I had been to the dentist in probably a decade.
Oh, same for me back when I started going. Like, the last 3 years I've been going consistently. I get my teeth cleaned like
Well,
every
that was the
6
thing.
months.
I
and
have
everything.
had at my job, I have had consistently dental insurance. I've just never taken advantage of it.
Now, the first time you go after like a decade, it may be the worst because that's a lot of crap they got to try to
well,
clean.
no,
and
that
do
was
a-
actually the odd part. The odd part was, and maybe it was just because I've outgrown my fear or I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
But I went and I just got a regular teeth cleaning. I had a couple of areas where my gums were a little inflamed, and they were just like, "Oh, you don't really floss." And I was like, "No,"
Yeah,
but
they
I
could
brushed, and thankfully, though, they were just like, when I told them how long it had been and that I didn't floss normally, I said I do keep up with my brushing. Of course, they're probably already like, "We'll see."
Yeah.
But when they looked and they checked out everything, they were just like, "Actually, yeah, your teeth are pretty
if
good."
you actually take care of your teeth on a regular basis, brush your teeth like they're supposed to, you should floss. But I mean, yeah, I'm bad about that too.
I do it now.
It's one
They
of those
got
things
on
that,
me, and
yeah.
I was like, "I'm not letting my teeth right out of my
But
head."
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if you
I
actually
was-
take care of them, like going to the dentist is very easy because all they got to do is just scrape a few. It's like, oh, they look good. Get out of here.
What about you, Sean?
I was gonna say similar to Keith's situation. I had that what they say was an anxiety attack, and that was when I had started a new job and was just feeling a lot of pressure at the time. But when I went to the urgent care for my back hurting, and they told me that my blood pressure was like stroke level, and they rushed me to the hospital.
Oh yeah.
Once I got there, because I felt fine, that was what was freaking me out, was that I felt there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But the amount of time, like I don't like needles, period. And shot needles are one thing, but the IV is on another level of fear for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And when I went into the ER and they hooked me up with 4 or 5 different IVs in different, I mean, I thought I was in hell. I thought I had died at the urgent care and I was in hell. And this is what it was going to be for me. Just a lifetime of sitting here and getting stuck with this stuff.
Yeah.
No matter how many, I mean, they gave me 3 nitroglycerin tablets and my blood pressure wasn't going down, but I felt perfectly fine. They put me on some other stuff, but it was IV after IV after this. I was in there for like 6 hours getting poked and stabbed and hooked up to machines. And it just literally, I'm like, if I didn't have an anxiety attack earlier, I'm having one now.
Right.
You're making my blood pressure high. And they even asked me, they were just like, when do you normally get kind of anxious when you go to the doctor? And I'm like, hell yes, I do. When you start bringing needles and stuff out.
Right.
Like I go to the doctor, I'm perfectly fine. And the moment they say, oh, we're going to prick your finger while you're here and just test that, or we're going to draw some blood, I'm like, that's when my heart starts coming out of my
Really?
chest.
I have no problem with needles.
So I would
I don't
say
like
you're
it.
one of those that, like you just needles are not your thing.
Don't like it.
Yeah, I've never had a problem
No,
with it.
I don't
I
watch.
do not.
I look the other way, and it's like, again, if they're
Have you ever given blood?
no,
Oh, really?
no, if
See,
they're
that's a weird thing
if
where
they're
I
drawing
oddly
blood out of my
enjoy it.
arm or something like that, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
But when they start sticking that big flipping needle in your wrist, in the top of your hand or something, like, dude, I'm
man.
gone.
That heart cat they did on me when I went
Dude,
in.
I
when
wouldn't
went
be
in my
able to
arm.
do it.
Yeah, because I could feel it going
No.
up and around my shoulder, and like because they put it
Just
through your
kill me.
brain. Like
What?
They,
No, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Just kill
because
me.
you're awake, and they
Yeah.
do like the local say like you can't like I didn't feel like it didn't hurt, but like when they're feeding the thing through
my
your
dad, they did
arteries,
his through his thigh, and he said he could feel it going all the way up through his groin and everything.
I'm like,
and they tell you it's like you might feel like kind of a pinching sensation. It's like it didn't pinch. I could just tell that.
They always make it sound like it's nothing. You might feel a little pinch. I'm like, no, I felt you stab me with a 2-edged sword. That's what I felt. On my end, that's what I felt.
I like it's
you
weird.
Like it?
Like
Cronenberg.
When I do the blood, giving blood
inside of
like it's
pain.
weird. I'm like I find it kind of like I don't know what the right word for it is.
You're Fade Rafa.
But when they take the blood, I'm just like
No.
I'll donate blood.
No, when they stuck me with that stuff, and then when they did the CT scan and they injected that dye through my body, and I felt like I pissed my pants and my head was gonna explode, and all of that stuff going on. Like that just because they didn't get that right either.
Right.
They stuck me in the hand, and the stuff wasn't going through, and I'm like, great, now my freaking veins are gonna explode, and they took it out and put it in a different vein.
Now that does tick me off when you got some idiot that doesn't know
what
what
did you
they're
go
doing.
to school for 8 years for?
Right.
You're
Now
supposed to be
that's
able to
true.
stick me in the first
It's
time.
like okay, maybe you don't get it the first time. I'll give you a second chance, but if you don't get it the second time, like you need to go grab another nurse. I'm not letting you continue to stick me because you can't
That's
find
true.
the vein.
I'm not an orange. I'm a human.
No,
You're not going to stab me like you're stabbing an orange.
A nurse before, and rightfully so. I mean, she was all right. She was just like, did you drink water before you came? I was like, no. And she's like, you need to do that. She was like, your veins are just too light. And they were just like, if you drink enough, if you're hydrated, and like when you squeeze that ball, they were like, they'll pump up more because you got just your blood flows better, and so they can find it easier. So I've had them like critique me in that regard, but she
drink more water, you idiot.
Well, I know. Trust me, it was kind of one of those stupid things where I mistook the orders of don't eat anything before you come in as don't eat or drink anything. And it's like well, water's fine. It's like
water's fine.
Gotta be hydrated.
Usually it's water or black coffee.
Normally that's fine too.
Well, and the thing was so my blood work from the last time I went to the doctor's visit, because I'm actually at the point now where I do at least a yearly physical.
Yeah.
And like, or just blood tests and everything.
Work, yeah.
And it came back as pretty, like there were a couple things that were high or odd. So my doctor was like, well, why don't you come back in? We want to run some tests again. They might have either been ran wrong or just some numbers here that don't look correct. And I'm like, truthfully, I was like, I might have eaten something or, and I told him I had coffee. Actually, he spilt it when I was there. So, but the thing was, it was black coffee. I didn't have nothing in it.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if maybe the caffeine caused a spike in certain things, but I don't think it would have.
No.
I don't see how it could have affected my
Don't drink
my
Big
blood.
Red and then do
That's right.
Right.
Don't do that
Right.
at 2 in the morning. That'll ruin it.
But no, I since then I've dropped a lot of weight, so I think that's helped. I usually go back every year. So since it was so soon after that, and the numbers were still a little wonky or weird, but I was like, you know what? I'm waiting until December. After I've lost some weight, we'll check then. But no, the only other doctor's visit that I can really, I said the dentist, but after going recently, I'm like, I didn't stay away for a decade because I didn't want to go or was scared of it. It just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I did take care of my teeth enough that they were just like, oh yeah, you're fine. Like, got in there and they were like, just come back in August for your second cleaning, and they were like, we'll just check it, and then it'll just pretty much be a year cleaning after that.
Only thing about the dentist I don't enjoy is when they're trying to talk to you with this crap in your mouth, like you can answer. I hate,
Does that hurt? You're like,
no,
it doesn't? Okay. We'll
not
keep
even
going.
just that, because that would be fine, I guess, if they need to know. But like have like an actual like, what are you going to do this summer? I don't know. I've got this crap in my mouth.
Yeah, right.
Like it's like you want me like I hate it. I'm like,
you got to use
also
sign
hate
language.
when they, dude, that would be hilarious. If you just started signing and they were just like, I don't read that. And I'm like, well, I can't talk right now.
Like, what are you going to do this evening?
What? Whoa. No, I also think it would be funny too if that threw me off.
What? I'm going fishing.
I'm going fishing. Yeah.
Was not
what were you
expecting
thinking about?
Gosh. I was not expecting that sign.
The fishing sign?
Yeah, the fishing sign. But no, it was funny because what was it? I hate when they're like grinding away or whatever, cleaning, and then there's like the water builds up And it's only after they're done with a certain amount that they finally stick that
Suck
freaking
it out.
vacuum
Yeah.
in. Because the whole time,
Like you're gonna drown.
yeah, well, I think I'm either gonna drown or swallow something nasty, or I'm just sitting there the whole
You're
time.
supposed
And
to swallow.
it's like building up in my mouth, and I start drooling and
Yeah.
dripping on me, and I'm like, that's what I hate when I
Yeah.
go. But no, the only other doctor's visit that I would say remotely, and it wasn't really scary, but I hated going, was anytime I got my braces adjusted when I was young. Like
See, I
the
didn't go through
time
that.
I had braces, it wasn't necessarily the getting them tightened or whatever that was the problem. It was like, because often, I'll be honest with you, sometimes while they're working on your and that light's hitting you in the face, it was like after school was when I would go. I'd fall asleep.
Yeah.
And they'd work, and every once in a while they'd tug on it hard enough that you're like, I'm up now.
Yeah.
But it was always that day after going, because everything was so tight. I mean, eating anything freaking sucked. I mean, even if I had, mashed potatoes at school, the reason that was so good is because it was, obviously it was like, not a solid. It would just kind of melt in your mouth, but it was warm.
Yeah.
So it just was a nice sensation. But if you tried to eat anything that you had to bite into, awful. Absolutely awful for at least a day and a half of dealing with that when they would tighten your braces. And I hated that every time. Plus, I had a little bar. I didn't have to turn it like with a key, but I had a little bar in my mouth up at the top. And I finally got used to it, but you'd eat bread or something, and it would always get stuck up in there.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to get out of your mouth.
It's like, what are they having for lunch today? Peanut butter and jelly? Shit.
It's like, but I'm going to eat it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, we want to throw up our social media because we want you to like, share, subscribe. Appreciate all the love you can give us. That's
All
right.
of it.
Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube and Rumble. That's right. We're live on both those platforms every single week on a lot of those platforms.
What do we got coming up?
Well, hold on. There's that email, or are you talking about movie?
I'm talking about movie.
Movie? Well, I was going to talk about it off the show.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know. And we may be going with one I know you've suggested, and then there's that unfortunate Pixar movie that's coming out this week that I don't think any of us are looking forward to.
I don't want to support it.
I know, but it's like,
Big release.
it's a big release, and we don't know. Is it going to be milquetoast? Is it going to be a swing in the right direction? Probably not. So we'll really we'll let everybody know when we we almost got through the whole episode without him remembering.
No, I played
No,
both
he
of
did
them
it right
earlier.
at the
Oh, you
beginning.
did?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Fool.
Oh, shoot. He just got him. Are you not entertained? All right, great.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I ain't going to argue with that one. Yeah. But our email, real quick.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Every time. Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it. Till next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host.
Sean Sebastian.
And make a noise or something.
I'm not doing it in protest.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.